Hey there! In today's episode of Business as Unusual, we sit down with Blair Bryant Nichols, who's turned the speaker circuit into a powerhouse business. We'll dive into his journey of finding freedom, purpose, and building a business that thrives on impact. Stay tuned.
Business as Unusual is a thought-provoking podcast that explores the innovative strategies, disruptive ideas, and unconventional practices driving successful leaders and companies in the ever-evolving world of modern business. Subscribe, comment, and share for weekly inspiration with our host, Aicila.
Hi, welcome to Business as Unusual. I'm here today with Blair, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Well, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. And would you lead us off with talking a little bit about who you are and what your business is?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Blair Bryant Nichols. I'm the founder and owner of BBN Creative Management, and I largely work with speakers and people who are growing their business and their careers as speakers and leveraging speaking. And I'm talking about paid speaking, keynotes at businesses, conferences, things like that, as well as the broad spectrum of all other kinds of events and places where you could be speaking. And I coach and manage people in the kind of building of their business on the speaking side, and also how they can build a business around their speaking, figuring out the different products and services that would align with ongoing work that can be from the platform that speaking provides.
In terms of like the speaking world, I have some peripheral experience with it. It seems like there are a lot of, I call them pay to play things, right? Like you look at a big speaking event and you're like, wow, this person got chosen. And no, actually what they did was they spent 50 grand to get on that platform. Do you have any experience or thoughts around that, or how does that intersect with the business model that you're doing?
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think what I see is a lot of people just think about speaking as in the paid capacity. And especially when you're starting off, it's not super lucrative. Maybe $1,000 here, a few $1,000s there, as depending on where you're speaking and what their budgets are and everything else. So it's certainly not something that you can make a full-time job right away. And a lot of people put their focus on just building that side of it up. But what you're describing is the business model that a lot of events have, which a lot of these conferences or these public events are driven both by their ticket price and their sponsorships. But a lot of time, even the content is sponsored because people have paid to be in front of the audience that they bring together. So depending on what that sponsorship costs and what your business is, or what you're offering at that event, or what other perks you can get as a part of that sponsorship, it could be worth 5, 6, 10 times what you pay in a sponsorship. It really comes down to the economics of how are you going to leverage that opportunity. It's not something I would say you should do right away as you're getting out there. It should be something that you have a pretty clear idea of how well your offer, your product or service converts in a live event, so you can do some thoughtful economics on every event. Planner is going to tell you how many people they project to be in the room, but you have to assume that there's going to be some attrition, and you never know if everyone is going to be in your session or not. So you got to really look at all the variables and hunt and sniff around. Have they done this before? Have other people been successful? And I think the biggest thing to keep in mind with something like a sponsored stage, as we could call it, is that you could ask for different things than maybe what they're offering in the sponsorship package. So if it's not that valuable to you to have your logo on a lanyard or on a step and repeat, but it is valuable for you to make sure you get the entire email list from the event, or other forms of marketing, dedicated emails or other campaigns, other speaking opportunities to be in front of these people, you want to be thoughtful in how you negotiate in those scenarios, especially if you're writing the check, because some of the stuff that they may offer may just not really do that much for your brand or your business. That's really an interesting category. And I know it seems scary to a lot of people to like sink a lot of money into going to speak at an event. I would recommend it if you've kind of tried and true, I know when I make this offer, I get 3 coaching clients on average, and they're all paying tens of thousands of dollars, then it might not be that scary to spend 10 to 20K on a sponsorship, but certainly not something the first go round. But the other category, which is, again, another huge area of events, is just where you're not going to get paid at all, but you're not also writing a check. And so you're really bartering. It's a pro bono. They don't pay speakers, as that's kind of their model. And maybe they also, though, aren't looking for you to sponsor. So you could barter, again, your talk, your value as a presenter, and still ask for email contacts or to be able to talk about your products and services at the end, or negotiate some other element into it that is going to be the most value for you and in the interest of, maybe it's a nonprofit, maybe it's an association. Think of the organizations that have a mission to educate and to serve members, but don't typically have huge budgets. And are those the type of people you want to be speaking to? So you think about what the ROI is for you, and then you can negotiate those things that are going to be most impactful. And then the final category of paid speaking, where maybe you're pitching yourself, maybe someone's coming and saying, hey, we're looking for someone that speaks about what you speak about, or they're coming and looking for you. Great. Like, you've gotten to the level where people are paying you. You still have to work your way up the food chain as far as what your fees are based on demand and everything, but you're not going to be able to negotiate as much if they're paying you. So you're not going to be able to do as much as far as converting this audience potentially into clients or customers. So you just have to weigh the opportunity cost of a low fee, but maybe you still can lead collect. Maybe you can embed something in your presentation. Maybe you can do a lot of things. I'm not saying you should turn down paid speaking, but I'm just saying don't view it necessarily as always a much better option than events where you might be in front of your ideal audience for your products and services, but you've invested to be there, or you've bartered your time to be there.
Thank you. There's some new ideas there. I really appreciate you sharing your trade knowledge. One of the things that it said in the introduction I got for you was you're an expert in strategic speaking platforms. What is that?
So I guess that's kind of encapsulating what I'm talking about. Everyone wants to be an in-demand speaker in whatever way that looks like, but it should really come down to what we've been talking about, like, who is your ideal client? Who is your ideal audience? What is speaking doing for you? Not just, I want to get out and speak to everyone, and that's great. And some people, that's really what they're called to do. But most people, in order to make this business sustainable and to leverage speaking to create more business out of it, you want to think about going to the events and being in the places that are going to be most strategic for you. So a lot of times speakers say, like, oh, well, based on my years of experience, I can speak to anyone. I can talk to anyone. Or their business, like they it's kind of like in your same business, narrowing your niche, narrowing your ideal customer, figuring out how to really target the ideal people, I think, is what helps when you're getting started. And so these platforms might be specific podcasts or specific events. And again, some might be where you only get on stage if you're a sponsor. Some might be they never pay, so you have to just apply and be chosen, or others have a budget and you have to be chosen amongst maybe a lot of other options. So the strategy is just about being in front of your ideal audience and then what you do with that. Whereas a lot of times you give up more control of that when they are paying a fee or other things, because that really is, again, out of your hands. You're not really making that choice. They're coming to you, and then you decide if it makes sense for you to participate. But that's really all it is just not putting any focus on one lane or trying to go so broad that you don't get any traction at all because you're not relating enough to what your core expertise is or what makes you unique. And that's where you want to start, is where you've got the warmest leads and connections. When people that I'm working with, first we start by building their speaker assets and their positioning and their keynote topics that are going to be the most relevant for them and for the market, and in the language that the market understands, not in this made up jargon that maybe a consultant or someone else may want to deploy. It has to be really clear. And the next part is like, okay, now what do we do with it? Who do we want to reach? Who is like the ideal audience for this. And that is also informed by then what are the products and services that come after. You can have a B2C and a B2B strategy. Every event, there might be high-level decision makers that could hire you for more high-level workshops or other things, but there's also all the people in the audience. And maybe they're not in a position to bring you in as a speaker or to hire you as a consultant, but they certainly could buy your course, and they certainly could subscribe to your newsletter. And maybe, a year, 3 years down the road, maybe they will hire you as a speaker. But so many speakers in the past, especially in the paid keynote way, never really made a concerted effort to build a following, to build an email list, to build an audience. If people chose to follow them on social media, then great. But I know that it wasn't always an intention. And I know that you don't want to be overly kind of pushing yourself in a keynote capacity, especially if you're being paid. But you don't need to be overly anything. There's so many clever ways to just like, hey, you're going to get the slides from today and this free resource, scan this code. Great. Thank you. Like within seconds, you're moving on and people get free stuff and they can opt out of your newsletter if they don't want it. But chances are that becomes a B2C funnel for you. And, maybe long-term it's more.
No, yeah, I've definitely seen that with some of the folks that I work with where they may not directly get paid for the speaking gig, but they'll make mucho money from folks hiring them. Or mucho money is a technical term, by the way, in case you're wondering. Like that's what we use in the bid. Yeah, exactly. It's the mucho tax bracket. I have two other questions, but I want to probably get on topic too, which is, what do you think of as unusual about how you're approaching this business or the work?
Yeah, well, I love that question, obviously the theme of the show, but in general, I do think that my approach is a bit unusual. On one side, there is an entire industry, which I'm a part of agencies and managers, bureaus, speakers bureaus, where they're really the brokers of this world. And a lot of companies, organizations come to them with what they need in a speaker for their event. And instead of trying to do all the research themselves, they rely on these agencies to, provide options and then also handle logistics and all of that. So like any other agency, they're service-based. And so that's all though in this paid speaking world. And that's all built on taking a commission out of the gross speaking fee. And so that side of the business really has that as their business model. And then there's all these other events. Like I'm talking about speaker's strategy isn't just how many paid gigs could I get. It should be, where should I be speaking? How do I get as many opportunities in front of the right audience? And weighing those options like we've been talking about. This event we're going to sponsor. This event is free, a pro bono, but it's high level people. Or this event's paid and we're also going to combine it with this trip we're going to make worthwhile with, additional meetings or workshops or things like that. So it's figuring out how to optimize. So I think I just take a different approach than even my peers, in that I'm helping my clients build a business around their speaking and not just make their business speaking. And so I can help evaluate opportunities that don't necessarily come with a speaking fee, can look at it holistically as more of a manager, a COO with them, that I don't think they always get that sort of support, especially solopreneurs or people who are in thought leadership roles. They might have an assistant or some marketing people, but they don't often have another executive by their side. They don't often have someone that's, like a partner in what they're doing. So that's what really inspired me to go into management. What I was excited about doing more than just brokering talks, but using that as a platform for all the other things they might want to build in media or just in business. So I think that approach is unusual, and just the idea that speaking can be your biggest marketing channel. So many businesses get started by dumping money into Meta for ads and this, and you got to do funnels, you got to do this or that. And there's so many different things you could pay money into, especially as a solopreneur, that will help build your business. But if you're in front of your ideal customers as an authority, as an expert, that's a really quick way to turn them into customers and to turn them into qualified leads faster than waiting on the algorithms to just deliver people to you or to just focus on one area of digital marketing. I think we all got to think about it all, but I would say if you don't have speaking as part of your strategy at all, and especially if you're in the thought leadership space, especially if you're a coach or consultant or someone that would benefit from being an authority in a room full of potential clients, then it's a strategy that you really need to start thinking about.
Yeah. How do you help the people that work with you find those rooms?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts by having the focus, having the different, like now we know the ideal clients, and being thoughtful now and brainstorming and searching where do they gather, looking at associations in specific industries or specific parts of, maybe it's in healthcare, maybe it's in tech, maybe it's in financial services. So looking at associations, looking at just events in general. And all of the organizations or associations typically have contact information on their website. So starting to reach out, starting with your network, starting with the people that already know you by, hey, I'm doing a lot of more speaking and I just updated my website and here's all these beautiful things that I've created and please share. And just to start shaking out even the people in your own network that might not be aware that you're doing this, or that you have to keep reminding that you're doing this. And then it's about expanding your platform, right? So how do you get in front of more people, whether you're getting out there pro bono speaking or getting on podcasts so that more people can hear you and start learning about you? Then that's the same as building a platform in any marketing channel. And you just now have a different way in, and hopefully, even if it's not massive new numbers, it's better people that are going to convert faster for your business.
Who would you say thrives with your service?
Yeah, I mean, I think people that aren't just looking at paid speaking as their main revenue channel, but as something that supports what they're doing. Again, it often is people who are going to do B2B consulting or ongoing workshops, training, or facilitation. It's also people in coaching or advisory or things like that. There is, an element where it makes sense that people who are in thought leadership are going to be able to translate this into a lot more. But it really can apply to different verticals and different businesses. It's just about where's your audience. There's a super successful plumber who started a YouTube channel and just showing people how to do simple things when it comes to plumbing. And his leads of people calling him to do the work tripled overnight. So there's that, but that audience, maybe you're not going to find them at a convention hall. Maybe that's not going to be the appropriate venue for every business, but that doesn't mean that you being an expert in what you do on the right platform can't yield the same sort of results. So I think it's about kind of figuring out, again, where is your audience really, where they really are, and when are they most motivated to move up with you, and that understanding that people need a variety of products. So people that have a course that's affordable for the everyday person, if you're only selling super expensive executive coaching, then it's going to narrow the kinds of rooms you want to be in. And if this strategy is about scaling for you so that it's not all dependent on you and your time and delivery, then you have to also think long-term about passive products like courses and books or on-demand products, other things that are going to be driven more from that B2C. So it's for the people who want to look at themselves as something scalable and are inspired by what they want to build. And it can look different for every person, but that's going to be a big part of it. And I think it's usually people, one of my early bosses said, speaking is not a vocation, it's an avocation. I think the speakers who do really well, I think every author could be a speaker, but not every author wants to be. I think every business owner could be a speaker, but not every business owner wants to be. If you have a message that you really want to share, if you really want to do this, I think you should pursue it. Just like there's celebrities that people book, but they don't even love doing a speaking engagement. They might not love being there. Like, it should be something that you innately want to do, because that's going to reap a lot more rewards and benefits than just the business ROI. And that's what's going to make up for being away from family, being on the road, doing all the sacrifices that aren't the sexy part of this industry. But
It's not all fun and
Oh, you
games.
know,
What?
when there's hurricanes and events are canceled last minute and flights are canceled and all the different things that could potentially go wrong with live events, like a year long or more pandemic, then you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So that's also what's inspired me to preach this idea of sustainability for speakers and not just focus on paid speaking, because we've seen how easy it is to get wiped away if something catastrophic happens.
Yeah. The income diversity, I
Yes.
think, is very,
Yeah.
very important, regardless of the industry that
Yeah.
you're in.
Diversify that portfolio.
Have so have you ever had anyone who was like just super enthusiastic or hopeless, or any stories like that where somebody just they turned it around, or you a way that you sort of worked with them that you're excited to share, and obviously in a non-disclosing kind
Sure,
way?
of course. Well, it's just interesting because there's some clients who I've worked with, for years, and sometimes it's taken us months or years to get to like, oh my gosh, this is really the right topic. Even I think sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
has to be organically right. Like, when people want to go out and talk about something, it can't be forced. So I would just
Mm-hmm.
say sometimes it can really take more time than you think. And and that as a coach, as a manager, like I have to be really careful about, I don't want to be pushing my ideas on them. I'm never trying to say, this is the
Mm-hmm.
best thing for you to do based on my own thoughts, but what do you want to spend your time doing? And how do we create a strategy around that? How do we create goals together? And then that's what's going to support and help you build something. And they just really need to be shown the way. Like there's so many things like I mentioned that you could be doing to promote yourself, to grow your business, to do it, but it's hard to know what are the most important things first. I think for most of my clients, it's just about having someone to, I call myself like a speaking Sherpa, like how, like when is it right to approach bureaus? What do we need? What am I missing? What is, evaluating just the content and
Mm-hmm.
everything else. But I think what's been the most delightful part of it is to be able to just listen and reflect what they said and like be like, no, that's it. And like maybe they didn't even realize that that was like the aha or like the diamond that we've been looking for. But being able to know where they've been and capture some of that has been great. And I think a lot of people didn't know that they could really leverage, especially paid speaking for this B2C strategy. And now they're seeing 80-90% of their audience converted with these online mechanisms and strategies. And like the potential for that is just huge. People forget or don't know that your email list is an asset. It can be an asset just as a marketer, just as an affiliate, but
Mm-hmm.
also if you want to be launching courses and all these other things as your business grows, then of course you want the most number of people to reach out to in a direct way where you can't rely on social media to do that. One of these could go bankrupt overnight again, and then that platform is again gone completely away. So it is one of the channels you really have control over. So I think with anyone, it's
Mm-hmm.
just how they keep evolving and how they're optimizing their time. And that's the best thing I can do for solopreneurs or for business owners is like help them prioritize, help them really focus on the high return activities for them and start peeling off the stuff that they don't need to be involved with.
Mm-hmm. No, that's one of my, because I do business development in a variety of industries, I have seen it without exception. I don't care what your platform is. If you're not paying for it, you're definitely the product. And even if you are sometimes paying for it, you're still somewhat the product, but it feels a little more
Mm-hmm.
balanced. And yeah, they can change their model. I've seen so many places mess people's lives up because they decide, okay, we're done. YouTube did it several years ago, Medium did it, and it was a great place for authors. And then suddenly they were making pennies on the things that they had been raking in thousands before. Those are a great place to leverage the opportunity to meet new audience, but then you have to bring them into your fold. Big
Yeah,
changes.
exactly. And that's just like speaking. It's like your opportunity as like a first date to really present yourself. And you're not trying to present your entire book. If you've written a book, you're trying to present a main idea, like chapter 1, prologue. You're really trying to get across an idea that excites them to want to learn more, to want to keep working with you while also giving value to them. So I love that, because it's the same sort of like, you need to bring them right in to connect and get them on your list and move them forward, and not assume that they're going to find you on their own, like that they're just going to naturally move over if they follow you on Medium or something else, that they're naturally going to now subscribe to something else.
Right. Well, it's not a reliable business model, because it's like you're to speak to what you were saying in that same way. It's a revenue stream that's completely at the whim of somebody else, based solely on what they're doing for their business, which totally understandable, and just to be aware of that. So, will you tell me advice that you've received that's influenced the way you approach your work?
That is a great question. I think earlier in my career, I was excited and moving up, and part of my personality, like fast type A, high driving, I had a tendency to be kind of sharp at times with people, with colleagues. And my mentor at the time reminded me, she's like, there's definitely a time when, times when we need you to have an edge. Like I was the chief of staff and I was negotiating on behalf of the CEO, and I was a lot of his speaking engagements as well as other things. And like, that can be useful. But with your peers, your colleagues, other people, like, you want to be cautious with how you use your edge. And so I think, especially in coaching, like, I never want people to feel bad when I'm delivering feedback. I don't want people to feel undermined or like they've been doing it all wrong. So I just try to approach it in a really generous way, and in less of a like, why didn't you think of that sort of way. And that, internalizing that for many, many years now over time, I think has helped me become a much, much better coach and manager. And I think my clients appreciate my directness, because I'm not going to hold back, but it's not in any way trying to, make them feel less than, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's a gift. I think feedback is a gift, and learning how to do it in a way that shows a sense of care it's a fine line to walk. And I do feel like it's a gift, because I personally trust the people that could say the things to me that I need to hear, even if I don't want to hear them. Let's be clear. I'm not saying I'm always open to it, but I really, it feels safer to me when I have people like that in my life. So
of course,
they're lucky to have you. It's great.
Thank you.
What about you? So this is a question I like to ask in terms of, I read your background. You've studied publishing and entertainment. You obviously worked at a firm, but all of that together somehow created this action of, I'm going to start a business, which, as we both know, is not a baby endeavor. Like, that requires, or it is maybe a baby endeavor, requires as much attention to keep alive as a little newborn. How did you go from where you were at? What in you created that? Because other people worked at that company, other people have studied what they've studied, but you created this business.
Yeah, well,
why?
Thank you. Great question. And the truth is, it started back in New York. I've lived in Los Angeles now for 11 years, moved from New York, 11 years ago, and I moved to New York right out of college. So I started my career there. And the second place I worked, I started at the HarperCollins Speakers Bureau. They were the first publishing house to have a speakers bureau. And 2 years later, I had the opportunity to go to an agency that had a relationship with both Hachette and Simon & Schuster publishers. And I became, at a tender age of 24, 25, the director of both of these speakers bureaus, kind of directly related to the work I was doing. And so it was probably because I was young and inexpensive, and they weren't really that invested in these partnerships, but needed someone that had at least some experience in this publishing world. And I got the job. And throughout the three and a half years I was there, every quarter there's a whole new slate of books out, and I would be meeting with publicists and editors and going through who's already represented, who could we get on our roster, and who did I think, based on the topics, based on who they were, would actually be marketable. And it was kind of never ending. And so we're adding dozens of people every quarter. I have a very small team, and I didn't like the feeling of being responsible for so many people while knowing that I'm performing for a very small set of them, or only a small set of them are being successful, which is pretty normal for an agency model. It's always a 20/80 rule, or, there's always going to be clients, I'm sure, that drive more of the business, but it wasn't really working for me. And that's when the idea kind of formed that I liked the idea of management. I liked the idea of being someone that had less clients, but that I could be
Mm-hmm.
closely connected with all of them, that I could be more than a broker of one area of their business, but an advisor to all parts of their business, and that I could be, in part of their speaking and their publishing pursuits and TV, film, and all these things. So that's where the idea was that, well, I guess I need to go to LA. Like, I've been in New York. New York is unique that it is the center of publishing. So that's great. I've got ties to probably one of the things that LA doesn't have as much, but I want to grow. I was a literature major undergrad. And so I thought I better get an MBA, and UCLA has an entertainment management specialization. And so I applied there. While I was waiting to hear from them, I got recruited for a job in LA. And so that moved me out there, and I was working with Keith Ferrazzi, that's the chief of staff role I was talking about, where I was not always well using my edge, but it started me off there, and I ended up then still going my MBA part-time and doing it while I was already in LA. So this dream kept going. And while I was in business school, the idea of talent management was really just HR. And so I thought, well, maybe I should just, pursue some corporate Amazon MBA rotation job, or look into that, because, that is kind of what I want to do. And I want to be able to pay the loans for this MBA. I should at least explore that. Well, long story short, I didn't go that route, and the dream stayed alive that I wanted to be a manager. And I noticed, obviously, throughout my career, that when a person of color was added to the database or to the website, they were automatically put in this diversity category, or in this category, or that. And there was always dominant speakers that were in like this straight old white male persuasion across the business categories. And, there was a lot of other people, women and people of color and other things, that were just considered for diversity events or for special pride events or things like that. And so my commitment to bringing in more diverse speakers and clients existed when I was at these other agencies that I worked at, but I often ended up butting heads with the bosses who didn't want me spending as much time with certain clients and wanted me more focused on other people. And that's exactly what I didn't want. Is I just wanted the ability to work with who I wanted to work with and believed in, and be supported in that. So if I wasn't going to find that working for someone else, I guess I knew all along that I would need to go out on my own. So almost 10 years after this idea started, I finally did start my own business. And it was really 2021, 2022 that I was full-time in it, where I'd not even still had like a part-time W-2. Now I was really all in on the business. And so it was a journey. The MBA took longer than I thought it would. Getting a business launched and where I could actually support myself took longer than I thought it would. And I'm still obviously in the building mode, but I've never been happier, in the sense that I love the freedom to choose who I talk to in my day-to-day, and to choose how I spend my time. And there's no one that is looking over my shoulder and how I'm spending my time, or where, or with who. And to me, that was the most important thing. So that's what got me here.
Thank you. One of the things that I had wanted to bring up that you mentioned in the things you shared before we met was that you advocate for diverse and purpose-driven success. And I feel like that what you just shared kind of touches on that. But is there any more that you want to add about what that means to you?
And I realized I didn't want anyone to feel excluded by saying, like, I only work with diverse speakers, and what does that mean? And does that include me or not? So, but what I did note is that the people that I always aligned with, regardless of any, identity categories, were people who were doing speaking because they had that bigger mission. Like I mentioned, they have that advocation, whether it is a business for them or not. Like, they are purpose driven by the impact that they make, by the ideas that they share, and that they really to me, and I've been around enough people that you sniff tests on who's fake and who's real and who's an actual jerk and who's not. And, I like to work with the non-jerks, believe it or not. I think most people do. And so if you're purpose driven, that's going to fuel me as well. So that's kind of to broaden it for people feeling like maybe they don't fit into one of these underrepresented categories, but I really want to help support what they're doing no matter what.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. What does success look like to you?
Success to me, part of it is what I'm experiencing now, in some degree of getting to choose how I spend my time and where I spend it, and that it's ultimately up to me if I travel, where I travel, and all of that. But I think growing this company and being able to almost have someone else running the speaking part of it is like my long-term goal, because I really want to work with my clients in so many different ways. I've been wanting to be a producer, to be someone that contributes to other areas more than where I've spent most of my career. I'd love to be able to kind of grow myself beyond where my expertise is now into all other areas and have a business that still supports where we started.
Oh, I wish that for you. That sounds lovely. I do really agree. Like being able to choose who you work with and feel like very aligned and joyful about it. It was one of my success goals when I started my company, and it just makes everything easier because you're just happy to talk to people. Even when you're having a bad day, you're like, oh yeah, let's talk about the emails.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm someone that suffers from like anxiety pre-call just for the nature of it, and I think we all got really burnt out in COVID of wall-to-wall Zoom meetings and all this other aspects that feel even more performative than some other media. But I've noticed that in the last couple of years, I don't have that as much because I'm not nervous about the people I'm talking to. I'm ultimately accountable to myself. So it has made things easier. And for a lot of us, I think we need that flexibility to thrive because work hasn't been designed for whether it's neurodivergence or anything else that we encounter, and that's just more common than most workplaces care to figure out how to accommodate.
That's facts. So we've talked about the good things, and one of the things that any small business owner can relate to, any human working honestly in modern society, is that there are days that are just, they're too much, or you're exhausted, or you're like, crap, not today, but you have to. So how do you keep yourself inspired or recharged when you hit those moments of like, really, do I have to do this right now?
Well, I mean, I'd probably by like punting it down the road, like giving myself permission to just say, okay, do what you can today. There's times when I like would be either in like feeling like anxious or something else is happening where I would have to cancel a call or something like that. And I've been really proud of just keeping my calendar, not to like, if there's on it, to honor anything on my calendar. It's like, I can do what I've committed to. I set up my Calendly so that people can't just drop in last minute. So I'm prepared. And if that's all I do is get through the things that are on my calendar, then I just, think that that's okay for today. And other times you need to set time aside and say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it by this date, and whatever motivation or reward you need to give yourself to do it, then sometimes that's just how we have to. For if we don't have someone else or someone to report to or anyone else that's breathing down our neck to get things done, then you got to figure out how to do it for yourself and be self-aware enough to give yourself grace when you need more time, and be honest with yourself if you set goals that you're not going to be able to reach.
Yeah. Finding your own motivation without those externals is a trick. Once you do, I mean, it's not always easy, but I do think it's satisfying.
Yeah.
Because like you said, there's a lot of freedom that comes with it as well. So anything that you're burning to share with folks that we didn't cover?
Not necessarily. I mean, a lot of people ask me like, how do I get started as a speaker? It's scary and I don't know what to do. And to those people, I always just say, go speak at your kid's school, your alma mater, your church, any organization where you can add value. Everyone has something to share. If nothing else, you have your story, and your story is what you should be using in your speaking anyway to connect with people and then share the topic that you're really desiring to share. But any type of business, I think, can benefit from getting out in front of your community, getting in front of peers and colleagues, and sharing something that's going to help them and see what it can do for you, or do it in small ways like social media, or just start writing more, getting your thoughts out there. And, I would just love for everyone to feel like they should be sharing their story, because we do need to hear from everyone. We need more representation in who's telling the stories, who's sharing the information. And my mission has been not just I have diverse speakers that speak about diversity. That's not true. They don't. They speak about their expertise. They happen to be diverse, and we need just diverse representation in all the different categories, all the different businesses, so that innovation and equity and all the good things can happen.
Hear, hear. So folks that are listening that want to learn more, follow you, get in touch, what's the best way for them to do
Well,
that?
you can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn with Blair Bryant Nichols and BBN Creative Management. But you could also check out my website, BBN, as in baboon without the vowels, creativemanagement.com. And you can sign up for a free 30-minute consultation call. I love chatting with people where they're at, and hopefully, if nothing else, can guide you to your next step and answer any questions you might have about speaking.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I hope you enjoy the show. I love making it. If you did enjoy it, consider hopping over to the review portion of the platform you listen on and letting other people know about it. Or share the episode or the entire show with a friend, or subscribe to the show. Definitely reach out, get on my newsletter, follow me on social media, and let me know what you like, what you don't like, and what you'd like to see in the future. While we love our guests, appearance on the Business as Unusual podcast or any Bicurean consulting production is for information purposes only and is not to be considered an endorsement of their business practices, or character. Please properly vet anyone you find through this podcast and generally before you do any business with them. Thank you for listening.